Welcome back to World War II with SSI's Allied General. With this follow-up to the immensely popular Panzer General, you finally get to go campaigning as the good guys, either the Brits, the Americans, or the Russians.
I wonder if the Finns would call the Russians good guys.
You get 3 or 4, depending on how you count them, campaigns covering North Africa, Western Europe, and Russia.
You can also play any of the 39 scenarios individually, as either side.
Movie clips in the form of period-style newsreels provide a bit of information, as well as visuals for the eye candy crowd.
Yeah, bombs falling, troops marching, and those less than informative maps.
In addition, some wonderful still art comes up between scenarios and turns.
The game is now Windows-based. Most of the sub-displays now come up in separate windows, which you can move and minimize at will.
You can even multitask other programs if you really want to, but this is not recommended unless you have more than 8 megs of RAM. While you can play the game on a 486-33, it's going to be mud slow. In fact, it was even pokey on a Pentium 60 unless no other programs were up.
Yeah, then it became much zippier, a definite improvement in gameplay and fun value.
There are a few other nice interface touches. For example, detailed unit information comes up in the form of a commander's spiral notebook.
And instead of the clunky Windows help system, you get a streamlined intelligence report window. 6 simple screens with keyboard shortcuts and the like. The information window here is dynamic. Move the mouse pointer over your units to get a quick idea of their current status.
The org table window shows you all kinds of time statistics. Be sure to reset it before your significant other sees how long you've been playing.
I'm not really sure if all of these things are really worth anything. The org table in particular seems like an extra we could have done without. But if they didn't shrink on gameplay, I guess there's no harm.
2 new extras that are very nice additions are the dossier and history functions. The dossier lets you keep track of your battle and campaign results. Create a dossier for as many names as you'd like. General Patton, General Bugs Bunny, General Throg.
Throg no general. Throg eat generals.
When you play a campaign or scenario, you can assign a particular general to it. The results will be saved in that general's record.
Of course, it's kind of odd that one general can lead any of the Allied armies. Can you imagine Patton leading the Red Horde?
Dossiers are password protected. Anyone can examine your glorious or dubious record, but only you can assign a battle or a campaign to a dossier you created.
Gee, what would the real military be like if the generals could pick and choose what battles they wanted to fight? Can we say chain of command?
You can also have the game keep a history of your battles, unit by unit, move by move.
This feature I like a lot, but it's got some quirks. First off, the report box you access during the game shows information on one unit at a time. Useful in some situations, but tedious if you want to see what's been happening to your entire command. You need to remember to turn the recording on way back before you start a scenario or campaign, and even after this, I had some trouble with the game not finding files it needed or just giving me an error. Also, the text was sometimes scrambled. Definitely a feature in progress.
The unit purchase screens are very similar to those in Panzer General. You get unit classes like tanks, fighters, artillery, and infantry.
Depending on the scenario and the types of units, core or auxiliary, you may be able to purchase units from more than one nation.
Enough already on the pretty pictures and interface gee-whizzery. What about the gameplay?
Funny thing about that, it plays an awful lot like Panzer General.
Get out of here.
The absolute subjective truth. What I mean is, if you liked Panzer General, you'll like Allied General. But if there were any quirks in Panzer General that got your grognardian dander up,
like the weird, ever-changing unit and map scales, the major historical inaccuracies, and so forth?
Exactly. For example, take the scenario that recreates the Soviet invasion of Finland in 1939, the so-called Winter War. In the game, the Finns are given much more artillery than they really had. Ironically, this makes the end result of the scenario more accurate. The Russians have a really tough time, just like they really did. But play during the game doesn't ring true. Another example is in the North African Operation Crusader scenario. If you like games that give you 100 billion units where you control their every action,
every goose step, every trigger pull, every Kilroy was here drawing,
then this may not be what you're looking for. Rather, you get a big, fast, fun, beer and pretzels kind of a picture. If you like the idea of the Panzer General game system but don't like dealing with the historical and scale quirks, we suggest you wait for the upcoming Fantasy General. All of the fun and none of the history. Tastes great, less filling.
All in all, if you Panzer generals out there decide to defect to the Allies, you'll be right at home. The gameplay is virtually identical, except that there's more of it. The Windows interface,
especially in the higher resolution modes,
works fairly well if you have the computing power to run it. Some of the new features don't add a lot to the gameplay, but different folks will like different ones. We especially liked the history function, or at least the idea of it.
Historical quirks and weird unit and map scales may mean grognards should stay away. But for the rest of you, feel free to dive right in.